Hello, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And the title of this video is just my thoughts on Warren Buffett. So, lately, I've been reading a lot on investing, and I can just tell you a quick story. So, at first, there was one time when I got the book, Investing for Dummies, and I was pretty curious because investing is has a low entry barrier in terms of cost, in terms of getting into it, right? As opposed to real estate or starting a business. Starting a business, it could be 7 years before you have an IPO. Real estate, you need like an insane amount of money for a down payment, right? But stocks, you have stocks as cheap as $10, right? And some stocks are pretty good. Like you can get very good stocks for like $10, $15. Uh, so yeah, I was very curious about real estate investing. I mean, sorry, stocks. But then as I read the book, one thing I saw that it said was that to succeed in investing, you really have to start from the inception of the company, like not just viewing the financial statements for like the past 3 to 5 years, but really the whole, since the company was made. And to me, that seems like a very troublesome thing to do if you want to invest in a company that's been there since 1950, for example. So that was the point where I put the book down and I just decided, why don't I just try focus on starting a business, right? So I did manage to go to business school and I'm currently working on starting my own business. But then I thought, if I do get rich, if I do succeed, I would want to diversify my income. And that's where I would choose between either real estate or stocks, right? So that I could have multiple streams of income. And obviously, since I'd already started with investing, I thought more about real estate and I read a bit on real estate in my breakdown of, 60 best self-help books to read. I do mention the books on real estate. There's commercial real estate for dummies. There's 52 homes in 52 weeks. I think there's another commercial real estate book by Trump University. I haven't even started that one, but I think it's a good book. Then there was The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Those are the books. I actually finished that book, right? So now that I was finished with real estate and I had my real estate goal in mind, I was like, okay, let's see what's up with stocks. So then I heard about Warren Buffett. I mean, everyone knows who he is, and I knew about him since high school. So, maybe that's like 2010 for me. So I definitely knew about him then. Might have known him earlier. But the thing is, I think Warren Buffett is probably the most controversial figure in existence when it comes to making money, right? Because here's the thing with learning. The thing with learning is you don't necessarily want to learn from someone who is only good at something. You also want to learn from someone who's good at teaching something, right? And I think all of us will agree there's some people that are very good at doing things, but are not very good at teaching things. Um, I don't know which relatable examples I can give, but for example, in the Tekken community, Tekken is a fighting game, and there's this player known as JDCR, who's arguably the best player in the world. It's either him or Ni or Aslan Ash, or maybe even Saint. So definitely in the top three for sure. one of the best players. And there's another player called the main man Sui. So the main man Sui is not like, he's probably not in the top 100. Maybe he's in the top 200, right? But the thing is, the main man puts out so many videos. He's arguably the best YouTube streamer when it comes to Tekken, except, he mains Kazuya, and Kazuya is a Kazuya is a crap character. But anyway, he mains him, and that is proof of the concept I'm trying to talk about, in the sense that the main man is nowhere close to being as good as JDCR. Like, he would not win a single round against JDCR, but he's so good at explaining the game and the concepts. However, JDCR has also started streaming, but he's terrible. He's horrendous at streaming. Like, first of all, he didn't used to stream for a long time. Second, when he started streaming, he cuts the video in such a way that he only shows highlights. And I'm like, dude, I want to watch the whole match. I don't want just, I want to see what happens. Like, why are you cutting out so many scenes? So that's basically the concept that I'm talking about, right? And perhaps another relatable example is, obviously I was a student at some point, and I was trying to figure out how to get better, right? And of course, one technique which you can use to get better is taking notes more efficiently. So there was a friend of mine that I knew, and I knew he got good grades. So I was like, oh, by the way, do you have any tips on taking notes? Or maybe I asked him, I was like, oh, I wasn't there last week. Do you have a notebook so I can copy your notes? Right? And he said, oh, for me, I never take notes. I don't take notes. I just focus on understanding the content. And I'm like, yeah, fine. That might work for you, but like for 99% of us, that isn't really going to work. So now let me get into the meat of it, of why I think Warren Buffett is really a very controversial person when it comes to how he made his money. So one, he's against real estate, right? You can just search, like, maybe on YouTube, Warren Buffett's opinion on real estate. And he said, oh, it's hard to find a property that's really undervalued. So yeah, just invest in stocks. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's the craziest thing I've heard. Because if you look at the top, the about 4,000 billionaires, and maybe like at least 1,000 of them or 2,000 of them got their money through real estate. It's a large percentage. There was a Forbes article on how people made their money, what sector they're in. And I know a large percent of them made their money through real estate. But you tell me, how many billionaires do you know actually made their money purely through stocks? Not by starting a company. Okay, fine, they started hedge funds, but not a company outside of a hedge fund, right? Few, like very, very few. Like maybe I can only count 10 on my hands. There's maybe Lou Lee, Peter Lynch, even the guy who started Vanguard. I don't think he made a lot of money, but that was by choice. And maybe the guy who started BlackRock, again, I'm not really sure is a billionaire. But yeah, very, very, very few people actually become billionaires from investing in stocks, right? As opposed to, say, investing in real estate or investing in technology, like in terms of starting up a company. So when he said he's against real estate, I was like, wow, okay, that seems pretty controversial. And then second, in terms of his style of investing, he's a long-term value investor. So usually in investing, there are two types of investors. There are value investors and growth investors, though, I mean, that's the norm, right? That's what investors will tell you. But he even disagrees on that. He says there's really no such thing. But but in terms of the style, which he's been classified as, he's more of a long-term value investor. So long-term value investing is where you look at a company that has a long-term competitive advantage, right? So a company that's established, has been around for a long time, and is likely to be there in the future. So Swedish Investor on YouTube did a good comparison, a good explanation of one of the books based on Buffett and explaining his approach. And basically, he said, you take two companies, maybe something like Instagram versus it could be Samsung. He used a different example, but just for variety, I'll use a different example. Or let's say there's a company that makes fridges, and it's been there from the 1950s. I'm pretty sure Samsung was making fridges for a long time, right? So which company do you think will be there in 2050? The one making fridges, or an app like Instagram, which has been there for a short time and is a social media app, and apps continuously get replaced, right? So obviously it's the guy making fridges, because unless they make some super preservative and we no longer need fridges, we can most likely bet that people will be using fridges in 2050. So don't get me wrong, I think that's a smart investing principle, but here's the issue. He focuses on long-term investing or long-term holding, and he has literally said the best period to hold a stock is forever, right? Just hold it forever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's well and good. And he's basically saying hold a stock for like at least 10 years before selling it. And that's well and good. But to me, the maths doesn't really add up, because if you put all your money in a stock, right? If you put all your money in a stock, right? You have $1,000 or you have $10,000 and you put all of it in a stock and you're waiting 10 years. My question is, what are you supposed to live off of all those 10 years, right? Wouldn't you rather be a day trader who's waiting for the stock to go up? You're like, maybe, you're like, okay, I'll hold the stock for like a month or a few days. When it goes up, I'll sell it. I'll buy more stock. I'll wait for it to go up, sell it, and then, keep the money and have something to use. So, yeah, like, wouldn't you rather day trade stocks so that you have some money to use during those 10 years? So, to me, that's where the maths is not adding up, in the sense that if you're going to hold a stock forever, okay, when do you get the money? Like, when are you supposed to get the money? Like, I really don't understand that concept. Uh, yeah. And then he's also anti-technology. Like, you can go back to his first interview, which I posted on my business videos playlist, and it was back, I think, in the 70s or the 80s, and people are asking if he's going to invest in IBM, and he's like, no, I don't want to, right? But as we know, like, in terms of the industry itself, people have become tech billionaires, right? And people who invested in Apple like in 2007, or Tesla like in 2017, these are the guys who, they really got that high payoff, right? But he's like, oh, he doesn't really invest in them, because he says he only invests in industries that he understands, right? So it's not necessarily that he doesn't understand how to use an iPhone or how to use Instagram. It's more like he's trying to say he doesn't understand where the industry or where the business is going to be in 10 years, which is true. But basically, if you do, like, we don't know 5-10 years what app is going to be there, but for now we know that it's gonna definitely reach a peak before it drops. So for a lot of people, getting into stocks for the short term will actually gain them a lot of money, especially for people who are not very liquid. There's a quote by the Rothschilds, which said that stocks should be treated like a cold shower, quick in and quick out. I'm not against value investing. I'm just saying the maths for short term or growth investing makes sense. The maths for long term value investing does not make sense. So I'm curious as to how he made money those first 10, 20 years, because clearly he must have sold the stock at some point and purchased other stock. But obviously, he must have taken out money from the stock as well, just to earn a living, right? And the other crazy thing about him is that he's against diversification, right? You talk to anyone, right? You talk to anyone about investing, and literally they will tell you you should have a diversified portfolio. But he says, oh, what's the point? Just pick like the five best stocks that you know and put all your money in them, and you don't need the fees of like a broker or anyone. Because I think I understood his logic where he's trying to say, uh you're being charged a percentage, right? And the percentage compounds. Like maybe if you're being charged 5% and it's 5% annually, then next year it's 5%, right? But if it was compounding, it's 5% this year, and next year it's 5% of the principal that you had, plus the 5% that it's gained, right? So the issue was the compounding effect, that it reduces the compounding effect when you factor in the fees. And I get that, but the thing is, I don't think the average Joe knows enough about the stock market to be able to pick five companies which they think are definitely going to yield them a lot of results without the companies crashing. And if they do go the value investing route, the only issue is they're not going to make a lot of returns in the short run, right? And if they do make long-term returns, you have to be very liquid. It's like you already have to have money in order to make that money. So I'm not saying it's a bad strategy. I'm just saying the maths doesn't add up. And now the question is, okay, then obviously he's world's second richest man at some point. How did he make the money? So to me, I think the way he was able to make money was simply by his analysis of financial statements. I think he excels at that. Like he's very good at actually looking at financial statements, the balance sheet, statement of cash flows, and the income statement, right? I think he has a lot of techniques and terminology that he uses in order to pick good companies. And I think if you understood that and took like a different investing approach, then for the average Joe, it would probably yield a better result, if you get what I mean. So don't get me wrong, I'm still trying to understand him, but those are my thoughts on him so far. And that's kind of a summary of what he believes. But reading about him will leave you more confused than, with more questions than more answers. But anyway, I've uploaded some some videos that do give a breakdown of some of his books, and I have downloaded some of his books, or rather the books written by Mary Buffett. That's the other weird thing. He hasn't done a book himself, but Mary Buffett, his daughter-in-law, has done a book. So I've downloaded some of his books, specifically The Interpretation of Financial Statements by Warren Buffett. And to me, I think that's going to be the most valuable book. So anyway, those are just my quick thoughts. Maybe write and comment and tell me what you think about him. I still definitely think that he's the, greatest investor. So yeah.